Hello, Sydney here, and welcome to the Drunken Ork. Now what I want to do today is show you a technique that I use for weathering metal. Now I use it on all my Ork vehicles, battle wagons, trucks, def dreads, mech guns, grot tanks, and even mega knobs, to be fair. Weather up the metals using a few simple steps, and then you can add the colour and what have you in the details afterwards. So, what I'd like you to do first of all is hit like, subscribe if you haven't already, and once I've got that out of the way, we can get on with the video. Hope you enjoy it. Right, so for this, I'm basically going to use four main paints. I'm going to use army paint as gunmetal, or any silver I'd do really. I'm then going to give it a wash of Guilliman Flesh, Citadel Contrast, and then dry brush it with Mornfang Brown and Riser Rust. Riser Rust is one of the dry paints. I think it counts as technical or dry. Anyway. And this is the model I'm going to be doing. It's a Gearguts Mech Shop Grot Tank. I've already primed it black with High Coat Spray Primer. Primer? It's for my money, best primer. Buy it in bulk, you get it with £4 for a tin. 500ml tin goes a long way. So to start with, I'm going to stick some of the silver on my extremely professional palette, which is the lid off my pickle jar. There we go, and with an old makeup brush, I'm going to do quite a heavy dry brush all over the model, at least everywhere I want that worn metal effect. So like I say, it is quite heavy. I'm not just picking out the highlights, I'm basically giving it a whole coating. But if you don't get an even coating all over, don't worry, that's absolutely fine. That actually helps the overall effect I'm looking for. So if it is a little patchy, that's not a worry. Like I say, this works best with Ork vehicles because, or anything you want it to be a bit battered, because their vehicles generally don't have to look spick and span, and probably never did. So once you've finished, pop it down to dry. Won't take long, but it's important to get it all done. And now I'm going to give the brush a bit of a wash. Now I wouldn't normally show you this because, you know, everyone knows wash your brushes. But with these ones, it takes quite a while to actually get them dry once you've washed it. Because the big thick brush, you see, wringing out all the... See, it's sopping wet. So I've got this. Now this was given to us, or bought for us, should I say, Christmas by the missus. It's for something to do with nail varnish, I don't know. But it spins your brush. And then you go spin round. Woo! Good fun. And that brush is now essentially, well, it is bone dry. I can use that again for dry brushing. Absolute time saver. There's also a big nozzle for putting paint pots in so you can shake them, but it's not very good for that, to be fair. So anyway, here's the Guilliman Flesh. I'm going to give the model a full coat in this now. It's a Citadel Contrast paint, and this is what basically gives it the colour, the dirty brown. I bought loads of these flesh paints when I first started. I thought they'd be very useful for all the flesh tones I was going to paint, and then promptly started collecting Orks and Salamanders. So I have absolutely no use for Rakarth flesh, Kislev flesh, Reichland flesh tones, all these things. Although I am finding more creative uses for them. Bugman's Glow is my tongue paint, for example. So anyway, give it a full coating. In this, again, you just want to coat the areas that you want to actually be weathered, which is, for me, generally everything. You can literally be as sloppy as you want with this. You know, with contrast paints, they always say, no, try to avoid pooling. You don't want pooling and control the paint and drag it away from area to area. Nah, not with this. Slop it on. If it pools up in areas, champion. Don't worry about it. Just put it on nice and thick. You don't really want even coats because you're going for an uneven look. You're going for a weathered, dirty, stained look. So uneven is good for this. God bless you, Orks. Now this will take quite a bit of time to dry because it's generally sopping wet by the time you've finished with it. So, you know, make sure it's dry before you go on to the next stage. So we'll just have a quick look here. Once it's dry, you see it's starting to look just a bit dirty, manky, almost coppery in colour. Now we're going to bring that down to the next stage, which is the Mornfang Brown. Now any reddy brown will do. If you want, you can mix a little bit of a darker brown in with this, or a little bit of red if you want to up the rust tones. I generally don't bother. On bigger models, I might put this more towards the bottom of the model and then use the riser rust towards the top, just to represent sort of wet rust, dry rust. But you just give it it's probably a little bit heavier to start with here, but you just give it a proper dry brush, not as heavy as the silver, more of a normal sort of style dry brush, just to pick out the raised areas. But if you get any sort of smudging on the flat panels, don't worry about it. This brings a look down from as coppery as it was, just the Guilliman flesh on, down to a dirtier colour. Once that's done, again, let it dry, and then you're on to your riser rust. Now I use the riser rust because I've got it. Many oranges would probably be fine, but the riser rust is a dry paint. The dry paints are, to be fair, I've only got experience with 2 dry paints from Citadel. The riser rust, which is very good, consistency like cream cheese, and the Necron compound, which has a consistency like a pot of small squashy balls, because it's the driest paint. In fact, it's not even paint. It's not even cottage cheese. It's terrible. But the riser rust's okay. I don't know what the other ones are like. But you're putting this on and it just brings out the dry rust. Just brings out a little bit more of a, the orange, rusty sort of hue. Now, it's a great model to do this on, because even the flat panels have little bits of texture on them. There you go, that's the riser rust stage finished. See, it's looking like, we're talking not just like, oh, that metal's a bit worn. We're talking that metal's been left outside in all weathers for years. These are grot tanks. Although, to be fair, this is the same technique I use on pretty much all my vehicles. Once you've got that, I do like to do a final dry brush, once it's dry, with another silver. Again, I'm using gunmetal here to start with, and this just picks out, it just brightens it up a little bit, adds a little bit. It's just a fine dry brush. You don't want to be obscuring the brown and the orange you've just put on. Just picking up on certain edges, just that little bit of metal where the rust may have been scratched off or gouged off, back down to the full metal beneath. And if anything, it just highlights up the actual panels that have got the weathering on. Giving it another quick going over with a slightly lighter shade of silver. I think that was chainmail silver from Vallejo's Game Colour. Again, same as the one I've just done, but it just brings it up a little bit more, just picks it up a little bit more, the highlights. Again, don't do it as much with this one. It's just to pick out a few more, like say a few of the highlights, maybe the tops of rivets and the angles, especially at the front. And there you go, that's the weathering done. So that's basically how they end up. Suitably battered and weathered. And what I would do next is I would pick out the colours I want them in. And with the grots I generally do them in red, blue and yellow. Not the whole thing, just pick out a couple, 2 or 3 armour panels of each colour. Maybe just do a panel of checks. If I want to paint any wires and things on them, I can do that as well. So there you go, that's the video. And you saw how it ended up, so hopefully you like that. Now what I've done with that grot tank from that point is I added some colour to it. I think I mentioned there, put the red, the blue, the yellow on. I generally just add that as a solid colour. Sometimes then give it a bit of a wash. Sometimes I just take a lighter version of the colour and highlight just from the edges. I don't paint the full panel, I just paint an area in the middle, stippling it on basically. To leave some of the bare metal shown around the edges of individual panels. There's a lot of panels are just left with that bare metallic look. You can also pick out any wires or pipes or details like that. And I'll stick a little bit of, I think it's a Citadel one, Sterling mud. I'm sure it's plenty ways to date, but I ended up with a pot of that somehow, so I'll get a bit of that and essentially stipple that onto the tracks, wiping it into the wheels inside the tracks, on the front of the wheels where the muck would build up as the wheels turn and it builds up at the front. And also, yeah, a couple of white panels just to put some checks on, that sort of thing. Maybe paint the cliff on. So I finished off that grot tank, and I'm going to leave you now with a few pics of it. I hope you enjoyed the video, and until next time, take care.